सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति।
Last class, you told the story of the forest fire. So I wanted to know which instrument is lame and which instrument is blind, and why do you call the instrument lame and blind?
The question is from, I believe I said a story last week. And the question is from that story. The story I said last week is how does a blind person and a lame person escape the forest fire? That's the story I gave. The story then yes. Most of the times I don't remember the concept that is said in the previous class. Story I have to do. How does the Upanishads talks about how does a lame person and a blind person escape from a forest fire? By themselves they cannot escape. A lame person by himself cannot escape the forest fire. The blind one by oneself cannot escape the forest fire. So how did they escape the forest fire? They worked together. They worked together. How did they work together? The blind person, the lame person sat on the blind man's shoulders and said right, left, right, left, right, left, and both of them escaped the forest fire. That's the story. Now, don't connect it to instruments directly like that. Don't connect it to instruments directly, because if you connect it to instrument, you will get into a lot of confusions. That's why I don't connect it to what is mind and what is intellect. Don't connect it like that. But having asked the question, the answer is intellect can see, but it doesn't have it will not have the energy to run. Mind will have the energy, but it cannot see. If at all you want to interpret it like that, you can interpret it like that. But I wouldn't recommend these kind of interpretations as of now. But you can, because otherwise it's the intellect lame means what? All along we are talking about strengthening the intellect, and why should we develop an instrument that which is lame? You will get into unnecessary confusions. That's why I'm not going into these interpretations. But definitely that story has a point of explaining the integrated path. How mind and intellect how action, emotion, and the thinking has to be integrated for your spiritual development. Are you able to follow? To convey that point, that story is set. All that you got to understand is action, emotion, and thinking has to be integrated. Emotion mind has the energy. Mind has energy, mind has power, mind has strength. It is the mind that is focusing and all that. Intellect can see. Intellect can say this is the path. Intellect can say this is the direction. Intellect can say this is the road. Who has to walk on that road? Intellect says this is the road. Now who has to walk? The mind and action has to Mind and the mind and action has to do that. So it can see, but it cannot walk. The mind can
See.
walk,
Oh, can walk.
mind can run, but it cannot
Cannot
see because it's blinded.
Ah,
It is
blind.
blinded. And it's the general Shastric way. Wherever blindness is spoken about, it always refers to the mind. You can take wherever blindness is spoken, it is refers to the mind because mind is
Blind.
blind. Bhagavad Gita starts with the blind man, no? Dhritarashtra Uvacha. The blind man starts the entire, the starting point of it is the blind man's. The blind man wanted to know what is happening on the battlefield. So blindness is always equated to mind because it cannot see. But it can run, but it cannot know the direction. It can only run, just as the water. Swamiji gives example, the water. It is the banks that has to guide the water. If the banks are not there, water will inundate the field and it is of no use. Therefore, that which is guiding is the intellect. But the force is in the force comes in the mind. Are you able to follow? This is how the Shastras say it has to be integrated. I remember, if I'm correct, I said this in the context of trying to explain the integrated path. In the integrated path. In the how it has to be integrated. How action, motion, and thinking must be in one direction. Okay. The question that she asked is, what is mind, what is lame, and what is blind? I said the answer is don't connect it to instruments like that. There is a distinct function in a human being that has energy. There is a distinct function in a human being that can see. And both seeing and energy must go together. Don't connect it with mind and intellect. No, it's a story. So take the spirit of the story, and it's a wonderful story because a forest fire refers to the samsara. A forest fire refers to the samsara. You are caught up in that. You know that you are caught up. You know that it is burning you. You know that it is suffocating you. You want to escape from that. The question is, how? You are caught up in the samsara and you are suffering from it. You know it. Nobody has to tell you you are suffering. You are suffering. You know it already. The question is how to get out. The vast majority has to be told that you are suffering because in their blinding darkness, they don't even know that they are suffering. So this person caught in the forest fire escaped. Is it okay? Any other question is there? Because last week I couldn't.
Yes, there is a question posted by Rama Subramanian.
How does one understand the proportions of the three parts? Action, emotion, knowledge for oneself. Do the proportions keep changing as one progresses on the path? Oh, okay. I'm reading something else. Okay. How does one understand the proportions of the three parts? Action, emotion, knowledge for oneself. Do the proportions keep changing as one progresses on the path? I was hoping nobody asks this question so that I can go to the next topic. Because it says he says very clearly that it has to be, you have to act according to your. He says clearly that it has to be done according to a definite It has to be done according to your proportion. The question is, how does one know the proportion? Correct, Ram Subramaniam? The question is, how does one know the proportion?
Yes, sir.
By self-observation, you will know that which you are naturally gravitating to a lot. If you are gravitating towards something a lot, it means that is your proportion. Gravitating means that which you are inspired to do. I'll elaborate it. A predominantly active person. So there are three human personalities: the active personality, the devotional personality, and the intellectual personality. All human beings has this combination of three personalities: the active personality, the devotional personality, and the intellectual personality. Active personality means where you are naturally inclined to do action. Devotional personality means devotional practices. Intellectual personality means more of abstracts, interested in abstracts, thinking abstracts, etc. The vast majority of human beings are active only. Predominantly, they will be the proportion of active and devotional will be more in a human being. And the intellectual the intellectual aspect will be very, very less. How do you know that? How many things you need around you indicates what personality you have. You go into a room. Don't try all this, Ram Subramaniam. Don't try all this. If you try all this, we are disclaimer. We are not responsible for the consequences of this. You go into an empty room, just to four walls, and you inside the room, just to four walls, nothing. For the first few minutes, you will enjoy. The first few minutes, you will start enjoying that. Correct? That peace. There is a peace. There is nothing to distract. There is the peace. Nothing to distract. Nothing to disturb you. Wonderful it is. After a few minutes, it starts getting. After a few minutes, you start getting restless. You will start getting restless. You will start getting bored. At least you will want to see your phone, isn't it? At least you want to see your phone. Or at least you want to open the window and see outside. Jnanendriyas has to be, now I am explaining technically. Active personality means the karmendriyas are employed more. Action is employed more. Intellectual means the jnanendriyas are employed more. And jnanendriya, if you are employing the jnanendriyas more, you are called the intellectual. You are called the intellectual personality. What is employing jnanendriyas more means you become a contemplative person. What is it that makes my eyes to see? What is it that makes my ears to hear? Those kind of contemplative state you will be in predominantly, if you are a predominantly intellectual person. So, how does one know the proportion? How restless you get. How restless, how quickly you become restless. How much are you in need of the world around you to keep your mental peace. for somebody, so many things has to be hanging all around the place, no? Okay, take the extreme. There are people who wear rings in all the 10 fingers. Go to that extreme. It becomes easy to understand. You know, there are rings in all the 10 fingers. Even if one goes out, even if one is not there, there is a kind of restlessness, agitation. It means that person is predominantly active type. Restlessness is an indication. Are you able to follow? One. Second is, another indicator is, sir, what are we getting, sir? We are talking and talking and talking and talking for weeks together, months together, years together. Somebody, there are people who are hearing this for decades together also. What is all this? It means you are an active type. It means you are an active type. You follow? So predominantly in the initial stages of the spiritual path, you will be active only. That is why Karma Yoga is the advice. Do a lot of Karma Yoga, and in Karma Yoga, the attitude comes and Bhakti combines. Carefully follow. Even though Bhakti Yoga, we talk about it separately, Karma and Bhakti combines. Because Karma Yoga is action done with the right attitude and with the Prasad Buddhi, not bothered about the results. Now, so Karma and Bhakti kind of integrates straight away. Straight away, they kind of integrates. Jnanam slightly stands out separately. Jnanam slightly stands out separately. And when we say Jnanam, we are talking about two types of Jnanam here. Ram Subramanian, carefully follow. Two types of Jnanam we are talking about. One type of Jnanam is knowledge of an action, knowledge of how to do an action. That is also knowledge. You need to know how to do an action. You need to know what to do, what not to do. So even knowledge is involved, even when we talk about action, knowledge is involved. Correct? That we do not talk about as Jnana Yoga. You have to be very clear on it. That is not Jnana Yoga. That is knowledge of action it is. Knowledge of an action it is. Because you need to know what to do, what not to do, what is the sequence to follow. All that you learn. Does that mean, can it be called Jnana Yoga? Vedanta says, no, that cannot be called Jnana Yoga because it is still connected to action only. So it is knowledge of action. Then what is Jnana Yoga? Then what is Jnana Yoga? Karma Yoga says you have to purify yourself. Remember this distinction, it becomes very clear. You will never have this doubt. Karma Yoga says you need to purify yourself. Bhakti Yoga says you need to chasten yourself. Both. Jnana Yoga says pure you are already. Pure you are already. Unless you have done these two a lot and matured, you can never understand what Jnana Yoga is saying. That is why you find mere intelligent philosophers walking around with no spiritual growth at all. Because they keep saying, oh, pure we are already, so therefore we don't need to do anything, all these kind of pseudo philosophers you find a lot. Therefore, in the initial stages, you need to have knowledge of action. And then you do the inner purification, etc., and all that, and then you develop and get to a maturity. What is the maturity? The spiritual maturity. The spiritual maturity of from attaining, having goal that you have to attain purity versus recognizing you are pure already. So it's two distinct stages. In chapter 3, he says, Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3. He beautifully sequentializes it. And then in the chapter 5, chapter 6, and all, also he puts the sequence very clearly. Yogi, Sannyasi, and Jnani. Meaning there is a sequence to the path. Meaning in the initial stages, you will be employing your actions and emotions a lot for purification. Once you are matured, you will get to the contemplative state. And when you get to the contemplative state, you are maturing into Jnana Yoga. And what is Jnana Yoga? Jnana Yoga doesn't mean knowledge of action. Jnana Yoga means
Knowledge of self.
knowledge of yourself. Knowledge that you are
That already.
you are that. Are you able to see the difference? The stages. So in the initial stages, you are the self and all will not ring any bell. To say you are pure already and all will not make any difference. You will hear it, you can repeat it also, you can tell somebody also all this, but deep inside you, it will not bring any transformation. It means you need to focus a lot on Karma Yoga. And when we talk about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga is included in that. For Karma and Bhakti is one. Sequence it is. So how does one know the proportion for oneself? Restlessness. How restless. Second is how dependent are you on the world around? How dependent are you on the world around you? Third, any deep abstract thought will take me to Yoga Nidra. Okay. Any deep abstract thought will take me to Yoga Nidra. I will feel like, oh, very nice, sir, very nice. Nothing like it means I am not. It means that's how I understand my proportion. You follow? Opposite of that is you take a book, you see what Aristotle says, you see what Kant says, you want to know what Plato says, and you want to know how this man says it. You are comfortable with abstract. Are you able to see the difference now? The third point. Please understand, we are not personally commenting on anybody. You ask the question, how does one know the proportion for oneself? It means this is how you know. Are you able to follow? Even when it comes to emotions also, you will know. You will know. How many times you can repeat thank you? How many times you can complain? How many times you can complain? And every time you complain, the intensity of complaint. And every time you say thank you, the intensity of thank you. How long can you keep going saying thank you, isn't it? But you can go on and on and on complaining. You can go on and on and on complaining, but you can never go on and on and on saying thank you. These are all the indications to know where you stand. Ram Subramanian, are you okay till now? And then in the next topic, what he is going to do, the three temperaments, based on the Sattva Rajo Guna, based on the Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic Guna proportion, also you can know. Now I told you from the observational practical standpoint. All this I told. And then you can know your proportion based on the gunas. That's why we are going to talk about the gunas in the next topic. The gunas gives you a proportion of how active, how devotional, how intellectual you are. Restlessness is indication of active personality. Gratitude is the indication of devotional personality. Contemplation is the indication of intellectual personality. Put it like that, it becomes easy. Again, I repeat. Restlessness is indicator of active personality. That's why tamasic people who don't act at all misunderstand themselves to be very sattvic. That's why the three gunas teaches you that it cannot be, you cannot understand it like that. That is number one. Your devotional personality is determined by your gratitude. Gratitude means saying thank you. Saying thank you. Gratitude implies no more needs, no more asking. A grateful person will not ask more because he is already grateful. One is already grateful to what they have. Therefore, there is no further asking. That is indication of emotional personality. And what is the indicator of intellectual personality? The indicator of intellectual personality is contemplation. Contemplation is, you talk about action. I'll explain what contemplation is. You talk about action. Action talks about a goal, consistency, concentration, achievement of the goal, and not to, all that it talks about. And then there is a result. At the time you get the result, active person is joyful about the result. Contemplative person says, even this shall pass away. Are you able to see the difference now? Active person will be joyous about the result. He has done the right action. He has followed the right principles. He has followed the right action. Everything he has done. And when the result comes, there is a
excitement.
There is a joy. There is an excitement. There is a happiness about the result. A contemplative person says, don't get carried away by the result, because action that is limited by nature can give you only limited result. Action that is limited by nature can give only result that is diminishing by nature. If you are able to conceive the limitation of action, you have moved on to the contemplative personality. This is how you understand the shift. Is it okay, Ram Subramanian?
Yes, sir.
This is how, think about it also. This is how you can understand the shift. I'm just giving this as an example. All through this Vedantic classes, we talk about becoming active at one stage, and also we talk about, and also we give enough material so that you become contemplative also. But you cannot straight away become contemplative without going through action. Then why not talk about action only? Then why talk about contemplation and confuse? Why give both the knowledges simultaneously? Both the knowledges has to be given simultaneously, because you should not get stuck. Otherwise you will get stuck somewhere. Somewhere you will get stuck. Somewhere you will get stuck in the sense of maybe in some result or maybe in some emotion, and you will not move out of it. Therefore, as you are told to do this, you are also told what is the next one. Just as when the child is studying, at any given point of time, you tell the child to score well in the current class, correct? At any given point of time, you will tell the child to score well in the current class. But what do you understand? That scoring well in the current class is not the destination. It is not the destination. It means something higher is still there. Something higher is there. So as it is said, do this, the higher also will be
Told.
told, so that your knowledge is complete. Ram Subramanian, Sariya? Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Another question. This is also your question, huh? What does one study as part of Jnana Yoga? Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, others. What does one study as part of Jnana Yoga? What does one study as part of Jnana Yoga? You have given the list correctly. Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, all this. Prakarana, introductory treatises. All this is part of Jnana Yoga. It's not one book, it is lot of books. Few books at least. Even if not lot, a few books where the basics has to be clear. So part of Jnana Yoga is any Shastra is Jnana Yoga. Any study of the Shastra is Jnana Yoga. And we have Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, we have Upanishads, we have Upanishads, we have Bhagavad Gita, we have Vedanta treatise, we are studying the book Thesis on God. All these are part of the Shastra. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
One more and leave. Yes.
You said restlessness in action.
Yes.
Because there is no knowledge, that's why the restlessness.
Yes.
If there is knowledge, what kind of action will come out of the person? What is that opposite of restlessness?
Opposite of restlessness is objective action. Restlessness is an agitated state of mind. You do action to get out of the restlessness. You are restless by nature. You do an action to get out of your restlessness because you feel that if you are not doing anything, you are useless, you are wasting your time, you are wasting this, you are wasting that, you feel all that. So action arises out of an inner restlessness versus knowledge. That person also will be acting in the same manner. What is the difference? Just as in the Bhagavad Gita 3rd chapter, he says, you act, I also act, Arjuna. You are also acting, I am also acting, Arjuna. What is the difference between the two actions? You act out of restlessness, I act out of contentment. Meaning the result, the doing or the result of the action is not going to add up anything to my mental state. Are you able to see the difference? One action is action out of contentment. When action arises out of contentment, it is called leela, it is called sport. When action arises out of restlessness, it will result in stress, anxiety, blah, 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 etc. So, in both the cases, action happens. In both the cases, action happens. Even when you go to the contemplative state, also action will happen. For action is the insignia of life. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya akarmakrit. Action happens even there. It's not that that fellow will sit like a rock, like a piece of stone. It will not. It is not in that sense. But what is the difference? There is that inner restlessness is driving action. Can't stay quiet. That inability just to stay quiet, isn't it? Can't even sleep. That person can't even sleep properly because that person will see even sleeping as a waste of time.
Oh.
That person will start seeing, oh my God, every day I'm wasting 8-9 hours in sleep, sir. What a waste of time it is. Maybe I should cut it and be more and be more productive. 9 months in the womb is such a waste of time, sir. Make it into 4 months, make it into 3 months. There is that inner restlessness. Are you able to understand? Whereas in the case of a grown person, a contemplative person, what drives that person's action? There is a sense of inner peace, there's a sense of inner contentment. And that drives the action. What kind of actions? What type of actions? Obligatory actions. That's all. Obligatory actions. It ought to be done. It ought to be done. That's all. And when you do it, you do not know anything other than doing it sincerely. You do it so sincerely. Even the restless man will get confused, as though you are more restless than him. The sincerity make people misunderstand that. That's why the Puranic story gives the example of Krishna attending to the chapel stand. Remember the story. Krishna attending. Now, which culture will talk about their supreme avatara attending to a chapel stand? Why will he? Yeah, at least he should be in the sanctum sanctorum and everybody must do aradhana to him. No, but here we see the story where he's arranging the chapels, footwear, and the way he organized it was so beautiful that nobody has arranged the footwear so beautifully. The battlefield every day after the battle is over, Krishna takes the horses to the river banks, makes them drink water, scrubs them, massages them, feed them. He does everything, where there's no need for him to do all this at all. But then, having taken it up, it's what all has to be done, that person does. But there is a unique attraction in that action. What is that unique attraction in that action? There is something so peaceful. There is something so calm. There is something which is indescribable. Something that is so uniquely indescribable. You follow? Even when Krishna went to speak broker peace. Before the war, he went to broker peace. Draupadi and Bhima, Arjuna, all of them told Krishna, don't go and sincerely broker peace and all. It is more of a formality, that's all. Just to be politically correct, you are going to speak. So make sure that war happens. Krishna says, I don't know what you are talking. If I talk peace, I will sincerely talk for peace. And if peace happens, that's what has to happen. This is action. This is also a type of action. Are you able to understand the difference? So action not driven by restlessness. Because a person cannot sit quiet. Because the mind is so restless. Some action has to be. Restlessness is an indicator that you have to do a lot of karma yoga. Lot of karma and bhakti has to be done where restlessness is there. Restlessness is there. Bhakti, where fear is there, bhakti has to be done. Fear of what will happen? What will happen to me? I have taken enough care, enough precautions, sir. Therefore, I am safe. Bhakti Yoga says that has got nothing to do with my safety. The safety has got nothing to do with what I have planned and what I have saved for future. Safety doesn't come through that. Safety comes through, safety lies in the hands of the divine. That is bhakti. Are you able to follow? But people believe that they are safe because they have taken care of,
External.
they have taken care. I have got, I have got very good pension plan, and I have kept enough for my children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, etc. Therefore, safety doesn't come from that. Safety comes from what? You feel secure. You feel secure. Where does security come from? Where does the sense of strength come from? Not from these external supports, but from a deep understanding. What is understanding? There is the divine, there is the divine grace. Othello says, there is the divinity that shapes our ends. There is a divinity that shapes our ends. There is a divinity that shapes our ends. So there is you do what you ought to do, and your conviction is not on what you ought to do or the result of it. The conviction is there is a divinity that shapes your ends. It means you are supremely secure. When pain comes, you understand it's divine blessings that you have to go through the pain. So pain doesn't affect you. When you are going through some joyful situation, it is divine that you have to go through some joyful situation. So both you remain unaffected. Is it okay? Yeah. We'll read the portion, 3 temperaments.
The 3 temperaments. A human being is constituted of the 3 mental temperaments known as gunas in Sanskrit. They are sattva, trans-active, rajas, active, and tamas, inactive. The state of spiritual enlightenment is said to be beyond the 3 gunas. The law of nature is such that the sattva guna in an individual surfaces in the early hours of the morning between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. His rajas and tamas lie dormant at that time. Similarly, rajas predominantly manifests during daytime between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So does tamas show up at night from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. The law holds good for everyone, from the highest sattvic to the lowest tamasic person. In a sattvic person, the sattvic temperament is highest, less in a rajasic person, and least in a tamasic person. The sattva in a person actually wakes him up in the early hours of the morning. And he is in a contemplative mode. Hence, the sattvic time is most suitable for study, reflection, and meditation. Just as sattva manifests early in the morning, rajas finds its expression during the day, when people are found bristling with activity, while tamas emerges late in the evening. That explains why drinking, drugs, sex, gambling, etc. is more pronounced during nighttime. Your mission in life should be to raise yourself from tamas to rajas to sattva, and your goal to reach trans-sattva. Trans-sattva is the state of self-realization, God realization. As you drop your tamas and rajas, you attain more and more sattva. Continuing the spiritual pursuit, your sattva gradually displaces rajas and tamas. But sattva alone cannot exist since the human being is essentially composed of all three gunas. Consequently, pure sattva transforms itself to trans sattva. You become the Supreme Self, an enlightened person.
The Sanskrit word guna has two meanings. One meaning of the word guna is a property, attribute, temperament. Another meaning of the word guna is it's a rope, it's a shackle. That is where we give both the meanings. It is a shackle. So guna means, second meaning of the word guna is a rope, a shackle. That is why we say even sattva guna is a bondage. From where do we get this idea that even sattva guna is a bondage? Because the word guna has two meanings. One is it's a property, attribute, temperament. Another meaning is it means a rope, a shackle. By the very word guna indicates that it is a rope that binds you to samsara. And you need to grow out of it. And how can you grow out of it? Sequentially, only you need to grow. Gradually, sequentially, you need to grow. From tamas to rajas, rajas to sattva, and sattva to transattva. From tamas, you cannot straight away go to transattva. Those kind of jump and all doesn't happen. Therefore, it is a rope that binds you, and you need to evolve gradually. All human beings are made up of these three gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is equanimity, rajas is activity, tamas is inertia, a natural inclination to avoid action. Tamas is an inclination to avoid action. That is why procrastination is tamas. Procrastination is not avoiding action. Procrastination is postponing. Postpone. You keep, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. By the time you come to the evening, there are so many things that is piled up. Looking at the things that piled up, you are so tired that you don't do. This is tamoguna. So what is tamas? A kind of a natural inclination to lethargy is tamas. Rajas is activity. Sattva is equanimity. Whatever sattvic nature you have, your equanimity is available to you between 4 and 6 in the morning. Everybody has a portion of equanimity, a portion of activity, and a portion of inclination to inaction. So distinctly it will manifest at different periods of time. Distinctly it will manifest, he says. When it will manifest, the first sattva manifest between 4 and 6. The quality is so great that 2 hours is enough to sustain you for the rest of the day. Activity from 6 to 6. All indulgences starts after evening, isn't it? Indulgences, everything works around like that. Hanuman sees you can't say all this now because it's a, if you give this example and all now,
Mm.
yeah. Somebody may sue me also. But then example, I'm not giving, this is not my original example. This is what in the Shastras is given. Hanuman goes to Lanka and he sees women drunk in the morning, he says. Women drunk in the morning. It means the indulgence has reached the tamas in that environment is peak. Don't take it in today's thing about equality and equal. I don't know. Sorry, I was about to say equanimity. Then I said no, it is equality. And then why women cannot drink? Why only? I'm not getting into those politics of who's right and all that. Some example. What is an example? Indulgences start in the very early hours itself. Indulgences started. It means the tamo guna is so high. If it is like that, you will not be called a human being, you will be called an asura, rakshasa. Because there are no human beings in Lanka. All of them were asuras and rakshasas. So in the case of an average human being, there is a fixed proportion. What is a fixed proportion? Whatever sattva is there, it will manifest in the morning. Sir, but if I do night duty and sleep in the morning, when will my sattva come? Your sattva will not come there. That's all. It's as simple. But then if I have to do night duty and sleep only at, what will happen to my sattva? Whatever little bit sattva is there, that also will go. The law is the law doesn't change. We may get hurt. We may not like it, but the law doesn't change. You got to change. The human arrogance is such that they will change the law for themselves. You will want to change yourself, or the law means you are learning knowledge. You want to change the law to suit yourself. Now, sir, everybody is working only in the night nowadays, no, sir? Since everybody is working only in the night, why not we change the proportion? What is the proportion? Sattva will come from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, midnight. And the tamas from 4 to 6 a.m. Why not we change it like that? I don't know. It cannot be changed like that. That's what it says. It's an indication. Again, Ram Subramanian. Again, indication. You know, how comfortable you are in getting up closer hours of the morning. But sir, the best sleep comes only from 4 to 6. No? Naturally, sir, best sleep comes only from 4 to 6. Then what do I? Don't worry, sleep only. What else? Yeah, what else do you do? Another indicator this is. That which needs discipline and training is higher. That which you gravitate naturally is lower. That which you gravitate naturally is lower. You don't need discipline and training to gravitate to the lower. Are you able to follow? Sattva guna is equanimity. Rajo guna is activity. And tamo guna is inertia. In fact, tamo guna means avoiding the useless actions and avoiding the useful action and doing useless action is tamo guna. For you cannot be inactive. We have already seen that. Then what does inertia means? Avoiding the useful action and going to avoiding the useful and interested in the useless. That is tamoguna. And if you look at it, most will be interested in the
Useless.
Useless action only. So all type of, so useless action means tamoguna. Useless action means tamoguna. Useful actions but agitated doing it is rajoguna. Useful actions with peace is sattva-guna. As you evolve, what happens? Your tamoguna gets eliminated, rajoguna gets more and more refined, and you are established in sattva-guna. As you try to become more and more and more sattvic, a time comes where sattva itself will transform to transattva. Though the ultimate goal is to become trans-sattvic, you got to work to become sattvic. The way to become trans-sattvic, the way to achieve that guna atita, it's called. The way to achieve that state of guna atita is to get established in the noblest quality. Of the three, the noblest is sattva. Even that is also a bondage. That's why the word guna itself means rope. It doesn't say rajas and tamas is bondage. It says even sattva is a bondage. Even sattva guna is a bondage. All this we'll be discussing in detail in the 14th chapter. Don't worry. When we go to the 14th chapter of the Gita, we will be studying all this in detail. What is sattva guna, the cause, the consequences, the indicators, their status, their future. Everything will be discussed in detail. And then when we go to 17th and 18th chapter, the analysis will still continue. In the 17th and 18th chapter also the analysis, in fact, it starts from the throughout the Gita, from the second chapter itself, he starts the mentioning the three gunas. But the analysis starts from the 14th chapter. 16, 14, 16, 17, 18. 4 chapters. When we go there, we'll be discussing it in detail. That's why I'm not going into the details here. In the context, what is relevant to understand is the 3 yogas has to be done at the most effective time. Whatever spiritual practices that you want to do, you should do it at the most effective time. So whatever study and contemplation you must do it in the early hours of the morning. That is the connection here. To that extent, you understand the 3 gunas now. Whatever the integrated path we speak, whatever he said as integrated path before. Whatever he said as the integrated path, when it ought to be done according to what is the best time to do it? Sattvic time is the best time to do it. That's how the connection is. The 3 yogas, all that has to be done. And what is the time? You need to know when to do it also, no? For only when it is done in the krama sequence, you get the desired, you reach the goal only if it is done in a krama. Krama means sequence. So having said the integrated path, when should you practice it? As early as possible in the morning. Keep yourself active throughout the day. When the indulgent time starts, that's the time where you can take a break. Huh? No? That's the time you go to sleep early. That's the time you go to sleep early. Old English saying, early to bed and early to rise. That's all. Today is exactly the Opposite. It is exactly the, as a result of which what happens, you can gather intelligence at any point of time in the day. To contemplate, you need sattva guna, and sattva guna is available in the early hours of the morning. Why it is done like that, we don't know. Who designed it like that, we don't know, he says. Why can't it be available during the day? We don't know. Why it is available only at that time? We don't know. But nevertheless, this is how it is. So if you want to make best use of it, if you want to get the maximum benefit out of your spiritual practices, do it in the time that is supposed to be done. So all study, reflection, contemplation must be done in the early hours of the morning. You don't wake up at 4:30 and go for a walk, isn't it? You don't do that. You wake up at 4:30 and study for 1 hour, and then go and then go for a walk. Huh? But sir, when I'm walking, I'm listening to lectures. When I'm walking, I'm listening to lectures. What is it? It's called confusion. It's called confusion. When you just sit and you sit. That's it. You sit. As I'm driving, I can eat. No, sir. You can do that also. No. As you are driving, you can eat. As you are eating, you can do something else. You can mix match everything and do. But the result will be, you will not get the desired result. That's what he said. You will not get the desired result. Therefore, all that you got to do is what? First, you need to be inspired to do the spiritual practices, and also it ought to be done at the right time. For action to get the benefit, time is at what time it is done is very, very important. Therefore, he is discussing a lot about the time here. Why Sattva Guna, he says, is available at 4 o'clock in the morning and all that, because the practices has to be done at that time. What happens if you do it like that? I wake up at 4:30 and best time, I plan my day, sir. I plan my meetings, I plan my work, I plan everything. It means Rajo Guna has already, even if you wake up, you are only pampering your Rajo Guna. You are not doing any spiritual. It may look very smart. But in this topic, he's saying it doesn't work like that. And if you get angry, don't get angry at me. Don't get show all your anger on the person who's saying all this, sir. Not me. I'm only parroting what is said in the book. So if you want to get angry, Prasad, get angry on him only, not on me. I'm saying that. It manifests early in the morning. Rajas finds its expression during the day. Indulgences, there is a natural gravitation to indulgences in the night. It's natural. If you do it like that, what happens? Sattva will transform itself into Transattva. How does that happen? All three gunas have to coexist. More and more you become sattvic and sattvic. You hit a point where it is pure sattva. The pure sattva cannot hold by itself. It will automatically turn into Transattva. So the guna atita, it will happen. Continuing the spiritual pursuit, your sattva gradually displaces rajas and tamas, but sattva alone cannot exist, because a human being is essentially a combination of all the three. Since a human being essentially having all these three, what happens? Pure sattva cannot hold by itself, and it will transform itself into transattva. From sattva to transattva, we need not bother. We need not worry about how sattva will become transattva. That worry we need not have. But what we need to focus is eliminate tamas, eliminate rajas, and try to become sattvic as much as possible. That's why in the 17th chapter, he gives conducive environment also in terms of food, in terms of environment, in terms of everything in life. He divides it into sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. In the 18th chapter, the personality chart, the entire thing is, the entire human sphere is divided into sattva, rajas, and tamas. The action, the actor, the dhriti, knowledge, even intellect, he distinguishes as sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Even the renunciation that you practice also, he categorizes them into sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. The happiness that you are experiencing also, he divides it into sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. By understanding all this, you know where you stand, and also you know how to, what all you should attend to. And if you attend to, you become more and more sattvic by nature. That sattvic nature is a prerequisite for, that sattvic nature means a calm state. That calm state is a prerequisite for contemplation. Contemplation leads to meditation. Meditation leads to self-realization. If you remember the chart in the book, in the same book, we saw the chart last week. The three yogas leading to Uparati, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. All these means the sattva guna increasing. All these indicators that your sattva guna is increasing. So from concentration to single pointed concentration, and then you need not bother. It will automatically take you to the state of self-realization or realization. You become the supreme self and you become an enlightened person, become an enlightened human being. This is the lesson. The three temperaments. The yogas, understand the sequence. The yogas, karma, bhakti, jnana yoga, and then the integrated path. All this had to be practiced at what time? At the conducive time. We always ask for conducive environment, isn't it? It has to be a conducive. It has to be a conducive environment. So what is the conducive environment for spiritual practices? Sattvic time. Why? Because that day you wake up and do your study, contemplation, reflection, whatever it is, that sustains you throughout the day. Wherever you are slipping into result orientation, wherever you are slipping into indulgences, your intellect will be aware, your intellect will be strong enough to pull you back. That's how that 1 hour, 2 hour of spiritual practices in the morning gives you the strength throughout the day. What are the mistakes that people do generally? The mistake is getting involved in some activity or getting tired of activity and wanting to avoid activity. Only two things. One is you get involved in the activity. Second is after getting involved, you get fatigued, tired. And when you are fatigued and tired, you want to escape from action. And the only way to escape from action is the only way to escape from action is start indulging. The only way to avoid action is you start indulgence. And then you believe indulgence has given you a break. Indulgence will give you a strength so that you can come back to next day. Well, indulgences will tire you out. So the next day when you come back, you have lost it. Are you able to follow? This is how we do self-canceling actions. To avoid all that, you need an awareness throughout the day, and that happens in the early hours of the morning. If not 4 o'clock, he says at least 5 o'clock. Anything after 6 a.m., he says, don't worry, it doesn't make any difference, he says. Ideally between 4 and 6. If not between 4 and 6, 5 and 6. If not that also, after that, it doesn't matter, whenever, he says. But sir, if I'm very alert in the evening, only what to do? If I'm very alert, night bird. Correct? No, that's right. I'm a night bird. Rakshasas and Asuras will be the night bird. Human beings should sleep in the ghosts. Have you ever seen Ghost in the midday sun? All the ghost movies, I want to see in at least one ghost movie where ghost is coming during midday sun. It doesn't come in the midday sun. It has to be in the clock has to strike 12. Yeah. Then only so pitch dark it is. Because that is the time you can hallucinate a lot. Because in broad daylight, you cannot hallucinate. How can you hallucinate? Therefore, the sequence at the right time. The spiritual practices has to be done at the right time. With this, we conclude this lesson. And next class, we'll continue with another interesting topic. Self is God. Self-realization, we say. Self-realization is nothing but God realization. Self is God. Another important lesson where a little bit of Kenopanishad and all will come. Where we'll be studying a little bit of Kenopanishad and we'll study a little bit of Isavasi Upanishad. All that we'll study there. Beautiful chapter. Self is God. Are there questions, Irga?
Yes, Mala has posted.
Okay. First question. Reason behind someone living longer and some other shorter. How to connect it with the spending of their karma? I don't understand from where you are asking this. Where did we discuss these kind of things? Reason for someone living longer and reason for someone living shorter and all. Mala.
Because, sir, generally my question, sir.
Okay. Okay. It's a general question.
Yeah.
Reason behind someone living longer, reason behind someone living shorter, prarabdha karma. It's their prarabdha, that's all. If he has a long prarabdha, the fellow will live for a long time. Shorter prarabdha, the fellow will live for a short time. So it is entirely dependent on prarabdha karma. I was wondering where did I said all this? Okay. Good. Is it okay, Mala, to answer the first question? It is prarabdha.
Is it that karma spending? I just want to understand in the context of, like we all spend our karma during,
Yes.
the human life itself is given for us to spend our karma. So my question is, if somebody lives shorter,
Yes.
does it mean they don't have much karma to spend, or is it
No. Human life is given to experience the past karmas. At the same time, you can grow. This has got nothing to do with longevity. Don't mix up all this with longevity. Mala, are you able to follow? Longevity has got nothing to do with all this. Just because a person dies early or a person lives for 150 years doesn't mean he has such a long time. For life is a continuum. From one body, it goes to, from one body, it's going to another body. That's all. So one lifetime doesn't make any, in the overall context, one lifetime doesn't make any difference. And don't bring in questions like this, which will be very confusing now. Death happens when prarabdha exhausts. Human life is given for what? For you to evolve. Human life is given for you to evolve. And that has got nothing to do with longevity. That has got nothing to do with long life or short life. It's because there are so many factors that decides the spending of their karma. Because how to connect it with their spending of their karma, I really don't understand these words. As you are acting, you can either exhaust your karma or you can add up more karma. As action you do, in the way that you act, you can increase your karma or decrease your karma. It all depends upon the way that you act, not depending on the longevity of it. That we have seen already in chapter 6. Longevity has, Arjuna asked this question, what happens if I die halfway through? He asked this question. For which Krishna said, Nahi kalyana kritkasya durgatim tata gacchati. So longevity has got nothing to do with this. It is to do with the right action and fixing the right goal and moving in that direction. It is related only to that. This is to answer the first question. Reason behind someone living longer, some other shorter, we do not know those reasons. Longevity or short, please understand, it is your perception. That person is having a long life, that person is having a short life is your perception. From the angle of that person who dies at 30, that person has lived a full life. You say it is a short life. A person has lived 150 years doesn't mean that person has had a full life. It is all your perception. If you talk from the angle of that person, if the person who has to die at 30, if he has to live 31 years, it's a punishment for him. It is naraka for him. So longevity and all is our perception, which is all very limited by nature. Are you able to follow? Our notions it is. It doesn't have any factual basis. And anything that doesn't have factual basis, we will not discuss a lot. Are you okay, Ma?
Yeah, to next.
Answering the first question. Second, Atala, there are so many lokas. Atala, Vitala, etc. There are 7 lokas above and 7 lokas below. Puranic stories talks about all this. What Mala is referring to is the Puranic stories referring to the 7 lokas above and the 7 lokas below. What is all that? All that are indicating different states of mind, different grades of experiences. Different grades of mind and different grades of experiences. That's all it refers to. Different levels of happiness you experience. Different levels of agitations you experience. Correct? Grades of agitations, intensity of agitations. Grades of happiness, intensity of it. All that is symbolically told as 7 lokas above and 7 lokas below. Third question. Why does learning and understanding great principles like Vedanta, etc. become difficult? Does it convey anything? Because it is sattvic by nature, no, it is difficult. Because it is sattvic by nature, it is difficult. Because anything that is lower by nature, there's a natural gravitation to it. Effortlessly. You don't need to train to get angry, no? You don't need training to get jealousy. You don't need training to become all this. But you need training to say thank you. To develop gratitude, is training is required. So that's why any training is difficult. And the highest training being Vedanta appears to be difficult. It is appearing. That's all. Once you understand it, it's not difficult. When human life is said to be karma centric, another question. When human life is said to be karma centric, it should apply to all human beings in all part of this world. But why is India said to be karma bhumi? This whole planet is karma bhumi. In those days, they thought it. Now it is not like that, because we have got sankalpa mantras for North America, separate sankalpa. For South America, there's a separate sankalpa. Bharata Varshe, Bharata Kandela, they will not say. They will say something else there. I know those sankalpa mantras. So it means karmas can be done. It is karma bhumi, means karmas can be done. It should be done first. So it is not that India alone is designed for karma, but India has an advantage. That is accepted. That is true. What is it? Unbroken lineage of masters are coming in this part of the world. That is unique. That is unique to India. That is accepted. They will follow. Unbroken lineage of masters, one after the other, that Guru Shishya Parampara, how it is happening in this part of the world is a mystery, it's a miracle, it's a wonder. In that sense, we can call it as Punya Bhumi. Yeah, Karma Bhumi சொல்றதுக்கு பதிலா Punya Bhumi சொல்லலாம். Because enlightened masters come one after the other. Yeah. Guiding the entire humanity. Is it okay, Mala? Over.
The last question.
இன்னும் ஒண்ணு இருக்கா? Okay. Sorry, I didn't see it. A jnani detaches his mind and attributes his action happening due to three gunas as prakriti driven. It is also said that our mind got to be controlled by us. I'll repeat the question. A jnani detaches his mind and attributes his actions happening due to three gunas as prakriti driven. It is also said that our mind got to be controlled by us. So, what is the latter in the context of the former? The second part of the sentence is like Jai Krishnamurthy. Yeah. What is the latter in the context of the former? Mala, how you use the word jnani here? If jnani means an enlightened person, we really don't have much to talk about it, because that is the way he doesn't take I am the doer, he says I am the sakshi. Jnani says I am the sakshi. Jnani never takes the stance I am the doer. Are you able to follow? Jnani takes the position that I am the sakshi. Instruments are the doer, I am the sakshi. That is jnani. That's what you are saying. Prakriti means instruments are doing, Prakriti is doing. I have nothing to do with all this. Why? Because I am the sakshi. Because I am the electricity enlivening the bulbs. He takes that position. He doesn't say I am the bulb enlivened by electricity. He doesn't say that. He says I am the electricity enlivening the bulb. So a jnani always says Jnani never says I am the doer. Jnani says I am the sakshi. In the case of us, we have to take the position that we are doers. In the initial stages of the spiritual practices, we cannot take the stance of a sakshi. We have to take the stance of the doer. Doer to attain chitta shuddhi, for self-purification, for inner purification, so that I can mature to become a jnani. So we are talking about two different categories of species here. Two different categories of species. One species says I am the doer. Another species says I am the sakshi. Jnani says, I am the Sakshi. We cannot say I am the Sakshi because
We are doers.
we are a victim of the mind. Since we feel suffering, since we feel pain, since we feel sorrow, since we have something should happen, something should not happen in life, since we have all these, since we have all this, we understand what Jnani is the one who says, I am the Sakshi. We cannot say I am the Sakshi. We have to say, I am the doer, not interested in the result. I can say that. I can say I am the doer, not interested in the results of it. Prasada Buddhi. I am the doer with Prasada Buddhi, I should say. If you ask me, I will say, I am the doer with Prasada Buddhi. Jnani will say, what doer, Prasada Buddhi and all that. You are only a Sakshi. Are you able to understand these two differences, Mala?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Very good.
Jnani na appadi vechukongo. Jnani na keep it very simple. I am Sakshi vechundrungo. Jnani will say I am, and Sakshi is not a doing. Witnessing is not another type of doing. Remember that. Witnessing is not another type of doing. For we cannot understand, we misunderstand witnessing is also
An action.
a type of doing. Witnessing is not a type of doing. Witnessing is a state. Very different it is. So that is why we need lot of contemplation to understand even what Sakshi is. For the misunderstanding is, Sakshi is also another kind of doing, we will see. Detached pathaneer karda, sir. For Sakshi also we will convert it into another action only. For we cannot conceive of anything beyond action. Is it okay, ma? Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Last one and we conclude. Yes.
So you said pure sattva can't hold for long.
Yes.
So by pure sattva, you mean it is predominant because some amount of rajas and tamas will be there to do the some minimum activity. So in the same line, can I say that pure rajas also cannot hold for long? It will become sattvic one day.
The question that she is asking is, in the fallacy, what is the fallacy in the statement? Since pure sattva cannot stand by itself and it will turn into transattva, pure rajas also, if you can just become purely rajasic, will it automatically become sattvic? What is the fallacy in this?
Because it will want to come out of confusion and the intense search is so high that it will become sattvic by itself.
Rajas is agitation. Uncomfortable with agitation is not rajas. Rajas is mental agitations. What is sattva guna? A discomfort with agitations. So it is sattva guna that will drive you to get out of rajoguna itself. You cannot become purely rajasic. Are you able to follow? Are you able to follow? What is rajoguna? A discomfort. Sorry. Rajoguna means agitations. If you are comfortable with agitations, let us say, if you are comfortable with agitations, what happens? What happens? You will continue as you are. Are you able to follow? But then there is a discomfort with agitation. The discomfort with agitation is because of the minimum sattva guna. That minimum sattva guna is that which makes you uncomfortable with agitations and you want freedom from agitations. Are you able to follow? Therefore, it is reduction of rajo and tamo guna alone, conscious, dedicated spiritual disciplines directed towards eliminating rajo and tamo guna alone will help you to come to sattva. It's very clear. Are you able to follow? The fallacy is, what is rajo guna? Agitation. You cannot be comfortable being agitated. The discomfort is sattva guna. It tells you that no, something is wrong if you are agitated. It drives you out of it. Are you able to follow?
I thought if you reach the peak of agitation, it will become
Yeah.
non-agitation.
Yeah. She
something
thought
like
theoretically, if you reach the peak of agitation, that agitation will update flower itself into
that. Exactly.
lotus. Yeah. Update it will flower, it will turn into lotus. Yeah. Lotus allow suicide la varum. If agitation peaks, it will turn to depression.
Oh, okay.
If agitation peaks, it will not result in sattva. If agitation peaks can result in sattva, all of us should have become sattvic by now. Any number of times we should have become sattvic. Yeah. How many times we have hit the peaks of depression? How many times we have hit the peak of agitations, but nothing has happened. No? Are you able to follow? I'm not ridiculing. I'm saying the fallacy. I'm just making it like a thing to explain the thing. And Anshu, if I ridicule, I won't get my breakfast. That's why I'm just balancing it out. Now. Yes. I ridiculed and then I balanced it out also. So yeah, is it okay? Yeah. Venkat.
Shankar has SRL Shankar has a question.
Shankar, solunga. Yes. Has he
Sir,
posted?
question was posted in your chat,
Yeah.
sir. Your chat.
My chat. Okay. Who is Asura, Rakshasa, demon? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes. Who is an Asura, Rakshasa, demon? Mirror. Ram Subramaniam. Answer is, who is an Asura, Rakshasa, demon? Answer is mirror. Mirror na?
Your
Mirror na? Avladha answer. Avladha. Where is the problem? Shankar.
Sir, mood one, sir.
Correct. All the three? No. Someday clean shaven, someday half shaven. But still mirror only. Asura, Rakshasa, demon. According to the Puranas, they have grades. The Puranas, they have grades. Grades of loving, torturing others. Adha Asura, Rakshasa, demon. They love torturing others. Pain, induce pain to other, and they revel in that pain. Adha Asura, Rakshasa, demon it is. Are you able to follow? And then there are grades in that. Very good question. Rakshasana yaru? Maximum pain. Asurana pava. Yes. Savadsurada just making pain. Just to break 2 or 3 bones, that's all. That is a break 2 or 3 bones in a demon. Asurana slightly more than that. Rakshasana, till that fellow is destroyed. All these, technically, what is the answer in one sentence, in one word? Relishing the injury caused to others. Relishing, there is a very subtle joy in that. There is a very subtle joy in pain of. There is a very subtle joy in the pain of another. Allah, karma works, sir. Somebody does some mistake and go to jail, prison. Well, I will say, very good, sir. Karma is working now only. There is a joy in the pain of. When somebody goes through a pain, suffering, there is a relishment. Are you able to follow? Correct. They deserve it, sir. I am saying it objectively, sir. But they deserve it. Vedanta is correct. This is called Asura, Rakshasa, demon. Shankar. So who is an Asura, Rakshasa, demon? Relishing the pain of another. You may not cause it, but there is a satisfaction in that. You may cause it, you may not cause it. You may cause it and relish. You may not cause it, but still relish. But bottom line is what? Relishing the suffering that another goes through. Instead of sympathy. A person layer instead of sympathy. Wickedness stands forth revealed as goodness bereft of a guide. Wickedness stands forth revealed as goodness bereft of a guide. Na, you are becoming a deva. Opposite of asura is deva. And devas lay grades irukku illaya. Gandharva, Deva, Indra, Brahma. Again, asuraale இப்படி கீழே இருக்கிற மாதிரி அங்கேயும் grades இருக்கு. Is it okay, Shankar? Relishing the pain. Inducing the pain may not induce but relish the suffering of another. That is an asura, Rakshasa, demon. Okay? With this, we conclude and we continue with the chapter Self is